it's Ms. Rodriguez here, and I'm going to talk to you today about the coordinate plane. So we're going to be learning about how to use the coordinate plane to plot numbers and shapes and find locations of things. But before we can do that, we have to dig into the coordinate plane and kind of understand it better. So today's lesson is going to be based off of vocabulary, but it's a little different in the sense that I'm not going to have you write words and definitions. Instead, we're going to look at the coordinate plane and we're going to discuss the different parts of it. And so that's kind of your vocabulary lesson. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you have your notes book open to your next clean page. And go ahead and write the header, the coordinate plane up top. So the coordinate plane is this neat thing. It's kind of a map on paper that you can use numbers with. And as a matter of fact, our maps that we see either in a map book or online at Google Maps, they're based off of the coordinate planes. We have coordinates for where everything is located on a map, and this is kind of like the baby version of it. We're going to learn the small part first. All right? So the first thing I want you to understand is that it has to do with number lines. And remember how I told you your prior knowledge is going to carry you through. So everything that we talk about in 6th grade, we're going to reach back into our prior knowledge and pull something. It might be something we learned earlier this year, or it might be something we learned in prior school years, but we're always pulling from that prior knowledge. So one of the things that we're going to be pulling from is number line. So the first thing I want us to do is draw a number line. And I need you to follow specific instructions on how we're doing this, okay? So pay attention, and if you fall behind, make sure you pause the video so that you can keep up, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to count down 7 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then on that 7th line, I want you to just, in the middle of the paper, just put a little bitty dot. It's just a little place to mark, okay? Then what I want you to do is I want you to draw a number line right here. I actually wanted it a little longer. There we go. Okay. And remember, on a number line, we always draw those arrows on the end to show that that line will go on and on forever. And then most often when we're working with a basic number line, we place a 0 in the middle. We don't always have to have a 0 in the middle of a number line, but when we're using a number line that's balanced, we always put the 0 in the middle, okay? And then let's count out. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And so we know that since we're going in the right direction, we would count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we know that that's correct because our numbers grow the farther we get from 0. Okay? Now on that left side, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to place -1, -2, -3, and so on. And we know that we're doing it correctly because our numbers grow from 0. Remember, even though the value is becoming less, the numbers are growing the farther we get from 0. Okay, the value is getting smaller, but the numbers are growing. Okay? Okay, so we have a number line. Yay! All right. That's half of the coordinate plane. The next thing we need to talk about is, what is this number line on a coordinate plane called? This number line on the coordinate plane is called the x-axis. X-axis. Okay? And when we do a coordinate plane and we're drawing one, especially because we're beginners at this, it's helpful to put the and the y until we remember, okay? So let's go ahead and look at the other half of our coordinate plane. So the other half of our coordinate plane, we have a horizontal number line. So now we need a vertical number line. So if we come back up to right about here, and we draw straight through, sorry, my 0 is a little bit off, straight through our 0. And we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little bit past. I know that's not quite straight, but I've told you before, I'm not the best artist. Remember, a number line has our zeros to show that it goes on and on and on forever. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did on the top half. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as we work up, remember when we do a vertical number line, as we work up, our numbers grow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then as we work down, our numbers grow. Got 6, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. All right, remember, if you're not caught up, it's okay. This is a video, so you can pause it and catch yourself up, okay? Notice once again on my bottom half of my vertical number line, my numbers grew as they got farther from 0, okay? Now, let's label this guy. This guy is the y-axis. I want to point out a couple of things to you really quick. Notice that all of my labels for the horizontal line are underneath. I didn't do this side below and this side above. I kept the whole line in the same position. And notice on my vertical number line, I kept all of my numbers on the right. You could have put your numbers on the left, but then you have to do all of your numbers on the vertical line on the left, okay? You need to make sure that you keep them on the same side. Otherwise, you're just going to make a very confusing coordinate plane, okay? All right, so let's look at this coordinate plane. Bear in mind that if you have graph paper, you can practice with graph paper at home. If you were in class, I would probably be handing out your graph paper to work on this, but we're not in class and I want this in your notebook anyway. So this example is going to be in your notebook and it should be on notebook paper. But bear in mind that on graph paper, each one of these squares would be 1. So if I drew my number line, I'm just going to show you really quick on here. If I drew my number line on here, this would be 0. And then each line, I would make a number. Okay? And then the same thing going up. If I was to go up, each line would be a number. All right, and notice it's a little harder to write on the number line. So for our first coordinate, a little hard to write on graph paper because it's so small. But for our first coordinate plane, I wanted to have more room, so we're doing it in our notebook, okay? Now, let's take a look at this section because in the past, you've worked with this section of the coordinate plane before. You've worked with graphs that look like this, okay? And so that section of the coordinate plane is called a quadrant. Each Each of these sections are called quadrants. Notice that the root word is quad. Quad usually indicates the word 4. So we have 4 sections in our coordinate plane. So that's why that's signifying quad 4. Okay? So this is quadrant 1. Notice that I used a Roman numeral for my 1. Many times, most usually, when you are working with a coordinate plane in advanced math, the quadrants are labeled with Roman numerals, not our usual numbers, okay? Not our standard numbers. So notice that's not a 1, it's a Roman 1. It's an I, a Roman 1. Okay. All right, so this area right here is quadrant 1. This area or section is quadrant 2, Roman numeral 2. All right, so we've got 1, 2, and we're moving in a counterclockwise rotation. So, you know, as the clock moves on the wall, it goes in this direction. We're going to move in this direction, counterclockwise, okay? Opposite of the clock. So, if I'm going to name this section, let's use orange. Hopefully, you should be able to guess that this is going to be quadrant 3. Roman numeral 3 is 2 lines with 3 verticals. All right, and then our final section, hopefully you're going to know that this is quadrant 4. And 4 is an I with a V. Roman numeral 4. All right, so counterclockwise, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. All right, now, notice the number line. If you look at all the numbers going in this direction and all of the numbers going in this direction, any point that we plot in this section is going to be a positive and a positive number. In quadrant 2, any number that we plot in quadrant 2, notice that everything up is positive, but everything to the left is negative. So that means in this section, everything is going to be negative coordinate, positive coordinate. Now let's take a look at quadrant 3. So if I were to plot numbers in here, I can see because I'm going left and then right, my numbers are all negative. I'm sorry, left and then down. My numbers are all negative. So I have a negative coordinate and a negative coordinate. And then quadrant 4, notice that all my numbers are going positive and then negative. So in this quadrant 4, I have a positive coordinate and then a negative coordinate. Okay, so if someone tells me to plot -2 and +4, I'm going to go -2, +4. I am in quadrant 2. If someone tells me to plot 3, -4, I'm going to go +3, 1, 2, 3, -4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here I am. I'm right here in quadrant 4. Okay. Okay, so remember, a coordinate plane is made up of 2 number lines. And the horizontal is the x-axis. And then the vertical, is the y-axis. Okay, so the next thing you need to know is, what do we call the numbers that we're plotting? Well, the numbers that we're plotting are called an ordered pair. It's also called coordinate pair. Or coordinates. Okay, and they are written like this. X, Y is the example. So X is a number followed by Y, which is a number. So X is a variable, Y is a variable. So X is always the x-axis coordinate, and then Y is always the y-axis coordinate. So this could be, it could look like this. 2, 3. If I were to plot 2, 3, I would do the x first. 1, 2. And then 3 is the y, and I'm going up because it's positive. 1, 2, 3. So I would plot it here. Okay. It could look like this. -2. So I start with my y. And if you want to know a good way to remember which letter do I always start with, which axis should I always start with? Always start with X and just think about the alphabet. The alphabet is X, Y, Z. So X always comes before Y in the alphabet, so you're going to always do X first. So -2, 1, -1, -2, and then 3 is up. 1, 2, 3. I would graph it there. All right, it could also look like -2, -3. So -2 on my X is -1, -2. And then down 3 because it's a negative. 1, 2, 3. So I would graph it here. And then it could also look like this. +3, 1, 2, 3. -3, 1, 2, 3. I would graph it here. Okay, so remember the X, Y stands for numbers. And that's how you'll know. And just always remember, a nice star there to remember, X always comes first. Okay, you always write that X first. All right. Okay, so that is how we make a coordinate plane, and you've gotten your notes for it. Make sure you have this in your notebook so that you can refer back to it, because we're going to be working with this coordinate plane for a little bit. So you need to be able to remember it. You need to memorize that the quadrants go in counterclockwise order. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to memorize that if I'm in quadrant 1, it's a positive positive. If I'm in quadrant 3, it's a negative negative. If I'm in quadrant 2, it's a negative positive. If I'm in quadrant 4, it's a positive negative. All right, so you need to be able to memorize. I should be able to ask you with your eyes closed where a point is. You should be able to envision it. Close your eyes, not even look at your coordinate plane, and envision where does the number go based on the number lines that you're using, okay? So you have a practice activity. Go ahead and work on that, and I will see you at our next lesson.